So today is a really short video on structure. Now, some people love structure and some people absolutely loathe structure. I used to be one of those people that hated structure. But today I'm going to talk about actually why structure could be a good thing for you if you're someone who used to be like me and felt like it was like being put in a straitjacket. If you're someone that loves structure and feels like you cannot start your book until you have your structure all sorted, then you're going to really love this video and, of course, the PDF handouts that come with it. So first of all, let's look at what structure is. A really quick definition of structure is what we could call story architecture. So imagine yourself as the architect of your own book, fiction or non-fiction. When an architect designs a house, they're looking at the practical aspects. Where do you put the staircase? Where do the doors go? How do the rooms flow from one to the other? How big is the kitchen going to be? That kind of thing. And that's exactly what you are going to be doing when you are looking at structuring or creating the architectural plans for your book. How big should part one be? How many characters does it need? When does the big event happen in your book? How long is the end part going to be? These are the kind of questions that come up with structure. Obviously they vary from whether you're writing a novel, which is fiction and has much more of a narrative arc, as opposed to a fiction book where there's various different types of structure that you can use. Although the most common structure for a memoir type personal development book still actually has that narrative arc going the way through it. So we can think of structure as a plan, although that's maybe a bit of a dry terminology. So you can think of structure as the architecture of your book, or even if you like cooking, the recipes, and the ingredients that you're going to put into it. Now, structure varies and is completely different from what I would call the actual writing of your book. Now, the writing of your book, maybe the writing technique or the writing mode, let's say, is you kind of creating brilliant sentences, living in your imagination. Wow, look at that sunset description you've managed to write. Look at that character you just managed to kind of capture in just a couple of kind of really cool sentences. That's writing mode. And that's always when you're in the writing of your book and your kind of ideas are flying off you like sparks. The story structure or the architectural structure or the structure is like the big picture. And it's kind of like, that's where that goes there, this goes there. Whereas the writing mode is when you've got that all sorted and then you're kind of just flowing through like a fish through your book. Now, some people love structure, and this is what I talk about in the handouts. And if you haven't read the handouts, which are in the Facebook group, then please do download them. There's 2 for fiction and 2 for non-fiction. So some people love structure. I mean, they literally cannot start their book until they know what is going to happen every step of the way. And some people hate structure. That was me, hands up. The whole idea of structure was something which was just like an affront to my imagination. It was like, oh my gosh, I just write on instinct. I don't need structure. And I'm still never going to be the kind of person that literally plans out my whole book. It doesn't work for me. But I have learned along the way that having some idea of the structure before I start writing is a really beneficial thing. It's a beneficial thing because if you don't know your structure or have a rough idea of your structure before you start your book, you're liable to go off tangent far more easily. You're liable to kind of lose direction, and you're much more likely actually to sort of run out of steam and maybe have so much going on in the first few chapters, and actually you get to the end of those chapters and then think, well, what next? A structure will help I suppose, the pacing of your book, and will help you approach the writing of your book with a much more kind of like a disciplined way. And if you can just create a loose structure, it doesn't have to be like a detailed scene by scene plan, although if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. But if you just create a loose structure, it just helps you know where you're going, and it will stop you from writing too many drafts. What I've seen is people that absolutely loathe structure and say that they don't need it, and then they end up writing literally 10 versions of their first draft because they're constantly trying to find the book as they're writing it. We don't want that. That's not the most time effective way for you to write your book. You don't necessarily need to write your book in 10 drafts. Ideally, a book is normally written in 3 drafts: the first draft, the edit, and then the polish. That's an ideal scenario. I'm not saying it happens to everybody, but when I wrote my first book, Voices of Angels, and that got published, I didn't have a structure before I started writing it. And it showed in the first draft. The first draft absolutely showed that wasn't a clear story going on. And I had to literally rewrite that book from scratch to become the book it was eventually published. So, having some structure will, even though it feels counterintuitive maybe, will help you avoid those kind of that time wasting later down the line, because you're going to end up either spending all the time on your edits correcting, or you can do a little bit of work up front. There's ways to make it really creative as well about designing your structure, and some of those suggestions are in the handout for you. So basically, knowing your structure also will take away, especially if this is your first book, will take away some of the fear and uncertainty that comes with the blank page. And that's the number one thing. Whenever I ask people, what's stopping you from writing your book, it always is getting started. And if we drill down to why getting started is such an issue, it's because you're about to approach this massive project, and you're literally facing the blank page, and the nerves kick in. Of course they do, and the pressure and just everything like that. It's like setting out on a journey, a really big journey, and not really having a sat nav if you're not writing with structure. But if you do a little bit of structure beforehand, it's giving you the sat nav to know that when you sit down on day one, you program in the destination. Okay, well, there's my route. And then you can start writing. That's the reassurance it gives you. And even if you're someone like me that creates a really loose structure, and in the handouts for the fiction PDF guide, I talk about the structure that I created for my second book, which is not yet published. I did create a structure for that second book. It was just a rough 4-part structure. And because that was a 70,000 word long book, that really helped me have a structure in place. For my children's book, I talked about the experience of that. I didn't really have a huge structure created, but I had the narrative arc of the character mapped out and the various sort of what we call beat points of the book already in my head. So what I would like you to do today, and this is today, this can take a couple of days, is I want you to think about and map your structure for your book. Now, I would like to see it. Whatever you do in your own time, you can create a really detailed structure. You can do it like with a wall chart and post-it notes, which is kind of sometimes what I do, or get an A3 piece of paper and put some pictures on it. You can make it like a really fun, creative exercise. And if you want to, you can be really detailed with it. And if you want to, you can just be kind of quite loose with it. When you have a structure, it doesn't mean that you need to follow that structure, like verboten. You don't. The rough structure that I originally created for my book, really, I ended up following it, but there was lots of detours and lots of new things that came up during the writing, and we'll talk about that in another video, the magic of actually sitting down to write and seeing what happens. But today I would love you to capture your structure in one page, a one-page outline of your structure. So it could be bullet points, it could just be you writing it out, it just could be really rough. And I'd love you, if you want to share your structure in the Facebook group for support and feedback from myself. This is an opportunity to get your structure looked over from me, so I can just say, yeah, that looks really good, or maybe you could tweak this or tweak that. Yeah, so that's today's exercise, and I really look forward to seeing how you get on with it. And of course, if you don't feel like you want to share your structure, you're not ready for the structure at this point, just bookmark this video and come back to it whenever you are ready. Structure.